Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the RENNSPORT Community League. And today we start off a new season with lots of new faces. One face you will definitely be familiar with, well, maybe not the face, but the voices are of course myself and Tim Ireland, who's here with me in the booth.
Hello everybody, hi Lena, hello people on Twitch, how are you all today? Yeah, it's season 6, so we all like a new season, and we're starting off at Jeddah, the big cousin of Orchard Road.
That's one way to put it. It is definitely one of the most interesting city tracks you can think of, or that one you can imagine. And we kicked off season 3, I think it was, at this track. So I think it's only fitting that we kick it off here again for now, season 6. And yeah, we are currently watching the defending champion because for the first time since season 1 we have a new champion in the form of Ruan Den Hood.
Yep, new champion, new season, and he's back to defend his title, which is always good to see. He says he's not the biggest fan of racing at Jeddah, but he seems to be doing okay so far.
Yeah, definitely. He will definitely have some very good competition here today because, well, a previous champ, or the previous champ, is also here. That is Dominik Ladler in the BMW M4 this time. For the first time in RCL, I think. We've seen him drive it in Nordschleife, but I don't think we have seen him drive anything else than a Porsche in RENNSPORT Community Leagues.
No, he's mixed it up a bit with an M4, so that'll bound to confuse us repeatedly throughout the race. Different car, different livery. But variety is the spice of life, as they say.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe brings him a bit more luck than last season. He still bears that number 1 on the number plate, so he's definitely out there to get more trophies.
Yeah, the number plate numbers are based on your RENNSPORT ranking, not the positions in the last season, just in case anyone was wondering.
Indeed. And we also see a couple of, well, new liveries and new cars, as we've already discussed with Dominik Ladler, but we see many more. We see another Katowice BMW here. I think that is Kimi Hapler, and indeed it is, so quite a coincidence, but those two chose now the Katowice livery. As well as some other, because we have the Katowice Audi back on the grid, which we will also talk about later. But for now, in qualifying, the first laps are being put in. Oh, and Kimi Hapler too early and too hard on the gas. Spins it once, but he will have another lap or another go at it. Michael G, we've seen him before in RCL. He puts it in 3rd on the grid, but Kimi Hapler with a 201.8 is already a very strong benchmark.
Yeah, he's got a couple of seconds on his nearest competitors right now, but there's plenty of time left. I'm sure some of the quicker guys will get closer to that once they've finished a lap. Yeah, quite a few 992s. We've got some M8s. We've got quite a few M4s. Severely lacking in the AMG and Aston Martin front.
Yeah, of course, one of our main Aston Martin drivers at the time, who's Enrico Bräuniger, is not driving here today, unfortunately, but I'm sure we will see him back later in the season. He chose the Aston Martin to go with for quite some time, so I'm pretty confident he will retain this. And yeah, for the AMG, usually we would have somebody like Ali Zahir or Tim Schroeder driving it, but they both are not here today as well. But that opens the door for the championship, and we've seen it last season how important that first round can be already for some other people. Oh, and Romantic Hunter, they're hitting the walls into the end of the second sector, that is. Let's see what Warren and Hood can do. Overall 500 away from Kimi Hapler for the first 2 sectors, but he will cross the line now. Did he have a very strong last sector? Maybe no, lost a bit of time, but wasn't valid. I'm curious to see where he invalidated it, to be honest, because there's not too many places where you can really invalidate at Jeddah.
But meanwhile, Kimi Hapler seems to be trucking on, setting some pretty decent laps here. So he's had a couple of purple sectors, for sure. But I don't think all of them yet.
I also see some damage on the front of Dominic Ladler's car, so he must have brushed the wall somewhere. Which, of course, at Jeddah can easily happen, but in a 45-minute race, as we retain the very typical format for RCL, don't want to really have that happen too often to you.
No, they definitely don't want to be coming in for repairs. But as it stands at the minute, it's M4 dominance, as we've got 3 M4s in the top 3, 2 of which are Katowice liveries.
And the third one being a new driver. Sandro Bullock from NGSRT, which you might have already seen on Radoslav Pironkiewicz. He's also an NGSRT driver in that Iron Dames Porsche, which you of course still can obtain yourself by watching 3 hours of ESL One in any of the broadcasts. So make sure to check that out. Next week on Friday we will go to Daytona once again for groups B and C. And yesterday's racing had some pretty decent team fights, so definitely something to look forward to. And Rondon Hood was able to put a lap time in. It was nearly 7/10 slower than Kimi Hapler, but we've seen that he can match Kimi's pace. But I don't think he has enough time to put another one in. So for the race, it will most likely be front row Kimi Hapler and Rondon Hood, unless Dominic Lala can do something about it, but he couldn't this lap. Couple more people coming across the line to finish in their last laps with about a minute on the clock remaining. And of course, qualifying does also yield points, so finishing good in qualifying helps your championship run, with 3 points currently going the way of Kimi Hapler, unless somebody can just dethrone him on the very last try. Rondon Hood very strong in the first sector though, which for him might be a good sign for the race.
Yeah, it's a good sector to make moves on, especially on lap 1, obviously. So yeah, it's definitely a good sector to be strong on, because there's a couple of overtaking places you can force there if you're fairly aggressive.
Yeah.
Not that Rowan's aggressive.
And if you make the move into turn 1 with the help of slipstream, you have a lot of slipstreaming going on in the last 2 sectors, which we see right here. Then, well, basically, what you can do is drive away. You have those very long S-bends, and you want to build a gap to the car behind, which you then can quite easily do, I'd say, if you have the pace. But, well, now it's time to see who can win the first race in RCL Season 6. And we can hear the engines rev up. So we go to live footage. Kimi Hapler on pole. And we go racing in Season 6. It seems like it has been a very good start for Rondon Hood, but he's backing out of it for turn 1. Further back, the 12 car being a bit wide. And a bit of a gap forming as well.
Dominic Ladler spinning on T1. That's put him right at the back of the field.
Indeed, down in 15th. But up front, it's Kimi Hapler and Rondon Hood. Further back, Cheska Monoya seems to have made up some positions. As we see the train forming. Sandra Bullock seems to have been able to get through without any issues as well. And I think also David Baker lost out quite a few positions here on the start.
Yeah, he's back down in 12th now. I'm fairly sure he was in the top 10 in qualifying. Yeah, he's lost 2 places. Dennis Kurtz are quite quick, but couldn't manage to set a valid lap during the qualifying, so I'm expecting him to make some fairly decent moves.
Yeah, Dennis Kutzer, of course, in that Katowice Audi, which we spoke about earlier. He's the one who, well, at least temporarily will take over this car from Joachim Thunder, you could say. Since he's on a bit of a vacation. And he's currently hunting down Radoslav Pironkovic for the top 10 positions. But up front, Kimi Hapler under pressure from Rondon Hood, who in slipstream is making a move around the outside. Further behind is also David Baker against Loic Desmerald. Let's have a look up front. Rondon Hood again in slipstream with a bit of a better run this time. Then into the last turn, into turn 1. Tries to go for the undercut. Prioritizes the exit. And Kimi also tiny bit loose there, but able to fend the Dutchman off. For P10, Loic Desmerald was able to keep 10th position, but now runs a bit wide. And Dominik Ladler already up back into 12th. So far, I'd say chaotic as Jeddah always is. And again, Rondon Hood trying to make the move now around the outside. But you can definitely see that Ron has the pace here to fight against Kimi. Oh, and Kimi Hapler into the wall. That will cost him speed. The question is, does he pick up some suspension damage from it? But they go side by side now. Through the flat out S-bends on the back stretch, you could say. Heavy braking zone. Oh, and they touch and they're both around. And big impact for Kimi Hapler.
Yeah, that's his spoiler gone. His downforce is going to take a big tumble after that.
And Tony Thomas with that, up into 3rd. And Kimi Hapler is waiting for his chance to get the car turned around. Sandra Bullock with that, taking the lead.
Already got an Oscar. Can she get an RCL win?
That is a good question. Rondon Hood being now hunted by Tony Thomas. And this completely switches the order at this track. Timothy Fridge up into 5th. He started quite far down because he was in the pits as well, as we could see earlier on. Dominik Ladler up into 10th. Now Kimi Hapler seems to still be in the race right now in the pits. He knows that this isn't over. But yeah, too wide into turn 22. That is, you could say on one hand very brave, on the other hand way too risky in a race like this, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a very sketchy move to make at this point in the race. There's a long time left to go. There's no need to be being too aggressive at this point.
More moves being made down the grid. Dominik Ladler for 9th. Oh, and solid defense there by Loic, but... Oh, and losing the rear end and then colliding with the Porsche, sending Dominik Ladler into the wall yet again. So far, both BMW drivers in the Katowice car not lucky at all.
It's not a lucky livery for today's race, is it?
Not really. It's just coming off the curb there, it really unsettles the car with the BMW, a front-heavy car. Yeah, it does make the rear end lose, and I think Loic left enough space there, while Cesco Monera is making move for 5th. Oh, and losing the car on exit here. Immediately having to give it that position back. Question is, of course, does Dominik Ladler have a lot more damage to his car now than he had before? And Ronan Hood is closing in on the leading BMW. Can see the 3 car on the map on the top right. Quite a way down from the rest of the field, which is still quite close together. Michael G in 8th. Yet, I think a decent qualifying and kept about in the same position. But up front, less than a second now between Sandra Bullock and Ronan Hood for the lead.
Yeah, we've got a few fairly tight battles going on right now. We've got Rowan and Sandra Bullock there, and we've a good kind of train of 3 drivers further down the field.
Only one who's a bit lost on track is Tony Thomas and maybe Timothy Pritch, even though Timothy Pritch is closing in on the Audi. But here goes Ronan Hood to the inside into turn 1. Oh, going for the undercut because there's a very good defense. And now again side by side into a fairly sharp turn. Turn 4 being pretty much the same as turn 22, just a bit slower and tighter. But this time the BMW stays ahead. Again in slipstream, this time into the hairpin around the outside. You can do that, you have the banking that helps you out. But the BMW a bit stronger here by nature. And again we go side by side onto the curb for Ronan Hood. And Sandro still stays in front of Rowan here. And now trying to pull the same move he did on Kimi Hapler. But he backs out of it. He may have... Oh, and clips the back of Sandra Bullock.
That was messy.
That was very messy. And to be honest, I don't think Sandro did anything wrong there.
No. No, I think it was a case of... Ooh.
Collision between Timothy Pritch and Sandro here. But... yeah, I'm not too sure about this. I mean... it was kind of slam dunk, if you ask me. So Sandra Bullock down into third with that. Timothy Fridge dropping down to fifth behind Cesco Monuera, who's now, of course, having the chance for a podium. Dominic Lala, meanwhile, up into seventh, and he's also on the back of this train. The only one who really gained from this, and Timothy Fridge spinning, exiting turn 1, I think it was.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, he just lost the back end and had an unfortunate spin. That's put him right back into 12th.
Tony Thomas, though, he's having a pretty decent race, currently in second. And Piotr Zadaibe is on the back end of Cesco Monuera, the two beta livery cars. Down the inside, and a very smooth move there by Piotr Zadaibe to take fourth. And it seems like the BMW of Sandra Bullock isn't too damaged because she's able to drive away from the pack behind.
Yeah, the steering wheel's nice and straight, so she's not having too many problems there. That's for sure.
Meanwhile, in terms of lap times, of course, it's a bit hard to say because we didn't really have any open free laps. So the fastest current is a 201.9 from London Hood. But yeah, we will only see better laps later on without the traffic. Dominic Ladler up into fifth, past Cesco Monuera, who's a bit weird in terms of his position. We know Cesco is one of the faster people, suffered a bit from bad luck in recent times, but he always gets some pace out of it, and then the next few laps struggles with it so far, I feel like.
Yeah, I know what you mean. He seems to be doing okay right now. There's a bit of a... I'm going to sneeze. I'm really sorry.
Well, we have a fight here for P9. Dennis Kurzer, David Baker, and Radoslav Pironkiewicz in a very beautiful color trio. Bit of RGB action. Radoslav Pironkiewicz missing his front left headlight, but that's not too much of an issue at Jeddah, luckily. Dominic Lala now on the back end of Piotr Zadaibe. I mean, we are basically nearly 1/3 into this race. Dominic Ladler ended up facing the wrong way around, exiting turn 2. He's up into 5th.
Yeah.
Kimi Hartler,
It's been a
meanwhile, is
really
up into
good comeback
12th.
drive. What happened to Timothy Frisht?
Well, the last thing I've seen is the collision with Sandra Bullock after the collision with Ruan, which was a bit of a chain reaction at that point. But
he's now last by 46 seconds.
He was definitely in the pits afterwards to repair the damage, so that would explain.
That's probably why.
And we see yellow flags in turn 22 for Radoslav Pironkiewicz, as Dominic Lala makes his move into 4th with the podium position inside. Now for Radoslav, more damage on the rear left.
Kimi Hartler seems to have lost his rear spoiler again and has just quit.
Well, so far, it looks more like a Road Atlanta race, if you ask me. But yeah, I think one thing that will be definitely looked at is the situations regarding this man today, because 2 incidents into the same turn, that is, let's just say, a bit
Yeah,
hard to tell how to really put it, but
maybe some lessons should be learned from that.
the fight is still on for the podium at the very least. I think unless Ron and Tommy Thomas will do any mistakes, which on their own they probably won't do, they will be out front. But between Sandra Bullock and Dominic Ladler, I think Dominic has the pace. So far from this race, we have 4 retirees. And still the fastest lap of Ron Hood with a 2:01.994. Now Cesco Monera has dropped behind Romain Decanter. I think he was in front just a few laps ago. Meanwhile, Michael G is in the pits. Perhaps also repairing damage he picked up, because I see the front right of his car is being a bit battered. Piotr Zadar was still in 5th after being overtaken by Dominic Ladler. I think for him this will be a pretty safe last 2/3 of the race. Dennis Kutzer is also closing the gap to Cesco Montoya, so maybe there's a way for him to get into 7th in this race. After being pretty much dead last after qualifying, not setting a lap time. And the field is also a lot more spread out, so we might encounter some traffic earlier or later. You can see the leading car, Ron Hood, with the number 2 car. And the 13, that being Michael G, who was in the pits, getting closer on the map. And only 2 seconds between Sandra Bullock and Dominic Ladler left. So, if he continues at this pace, yeah, he will be in shot for qualifying here. For qualifying. For a podium.
Qualifying?
He might be in shot for qualifying. Now qualifying points have already been awarded. 3 to Kimi Hapler, 2 to Ron Hood, and 1 to this man. So having a look at some lap times, you can see that Sandra Bullock last time around had a 204.3, Dominic a 204.5. So these two lap nearly identical. It's always a bit of a, well, back and forth. But the fastest lap time from Sandra Bullock is over a second faster at 203.2, which is a pretty good lap time. Of course, a bit remote from what we see the likes of Ron and Hood or Kimi Hapler do in qualifying, but still a very decent lap time. And except for one, nobody was able to get close to it, really, because the other lap times are 204.3 by Dominic Ladler and then 205.1 by Tony Thomas.
Yeah, I'm wondering if Sandra Bullock's carrying a little bit of damage from some bonks, because her lap time right now is quite a lot slower than her best lap time, as you can see. But yeah, Dominic Ladler's last lap was 0.4 seconds faster than Sandra Bullock, so the gap's getting closer and closer, and he's going to be edging towards that magic 1 second where slipstream really starts to kick in.
Yeah, and we've seen previously that the slipstream is very powerful. Around here you have 2 or 3 very, very long sections after each other where slipstream is very helpful. Meanwhile, Chesco, remember how I talked about him fluctuating in pace a lot? He's now back 1.2 seconds behind Romain de Canter, even though he was before about 2.5 away. So he suddenly found some pace again. Maybe getting adjusted to the bit of damage he has?
His last lap was 0.6 seconds faster than Romain. Again, Romain has the fastest overall best lap, 2/10 quicker than Chescu Monera. But I think Chescu's fairly consistent as a driver. He always seems to be pretty good at putting down fairly consistent laps, not making too many mistakes.
And let's see what he can make out of it, but it's looking pretty good for him. And the gap has grown, or shrunk to less than a second, between Dominic Ladler and Sandra Bullock. I mean, this has to be one of the biggest comeback drives. He had a lot of comeback drives. The very last RCL race at Road Atlanta was one, but this year, today, from well then P15 to now P4 and potentially P3, with over 20 minutes still left to go, so Tony Thomas might not be so safe after all, but that would be a comeback and a half.
Yeah. Like, there's still 20 minutes left. Maybe he could get up to Tony Thomas. Dominic Ladler's last lap must have been invalid, but was a 203.7. So yeah, the gap is closing up there. And also, Chescu Monera is getting really close to Romain de Canter.
Also less than a second separating them, but now this is the sections where the slipstream is getting very strong. You're being pulled in through those flat out S's. I mean, they're basically a straight in that sense. But then you have this quite hard braking zone into turn 22, where we've seen a couple of incidents today. And then you carry all the speed again with the slipstream up until the very last turn, turn 27. Lots of corners on this track, actually.
There are a lot of corners.
Indeed. And then you have the main straight, where you have your hard braking zone to make a move. So it basically all comes down to that. And we see Dominic Ladler being closer to the inside of the turn there, compared to Sandra Bullock. And down to 4/10 we go. And we also see that Tony Thomas is inside sometimes at the end of the straights. If the question from Audistano unfortunately isn't here today, kind of missed the race because he slept. Does the fact that the race performs at nights, or Does the fact that it's a night race affect the performance? At the moment, no it doesn't. The cars still pretty much stay the same, so the temperatures that you would have don't really play too much of a role. And Dominic Lala has a look to the inside. Oh, and yeah, he gives back the position. I think that's the best way to do.
I think understayed going into the corner there and ended up pushing Sandra Bullock wide.
I mean, this could have ended a lot worse, and we've seen it end a lot worse. So no real damage done. Of course, this gives a bit of breathing room again to Tony Thomas, who will be quite happy to see his delta increase a bit to the cars behind. Oh, and Sandra Bullock hitting the wall after being loose off the curb, and she picked up quite a bit of damage in the last few turns overall. I think she lost out a lot of speed in that BMW.
Yeah, it's not too far behind now, so it's still getting a little bit of effect of the slipstream. Maybe you can pull it back if she can keep close.
I think she might come into the pit. And yes, she does.
Yep.
So one of the big front runners of this race coming into the pits, opening the door for Piotr Zadybel to take fourth.
Just repairing damage, no tires or fuel.
But it will
And it was a nice tidy pit stop.
Meine Kanter and Cesco Monero are both moving up a position with that. But with also still 17 minutes on the clock, pretty much anybody can put it into the wall. That's what we've seen here today. So there's still some decent points up for grabs, including the one for fastest lap time. Because one thing we still have in RCL is a point for fastest lap time. Currently going to Ron and Hurt, just slightly faster than Kimi Hapler. But yeah, maybe she can beat that 201.9 because it's not an inherently strong lap time at Jeddah. It is a good lap time, but we've seen 200s around here.
Yep, that's true. There's obviously not much reason for Rowan to be pushing right now. He's got fastest lap time. He's leading by a few seconds. So he's got no reason to be particularly going any quicker than he is.
Even so, would he be able to? Because he had two quite big incidents with Kimi Hapler and Sandra Bullock, where I don't think with that damage he could improve on that lap time. He's lapping in the 203s. That's a second slower than what he usually does. And around Jeddah high-speed track, even a bit of aero damage will cost you quite a lot over time.
That is true, yeah.
Oh, and that's Decanter running wide and giving Cesco Monero the position. But maybe now in a good spot to make a move down into turn 1. He's definitely having a look. But decently defended by Cesco Monero. It's not over yet though. And I think Michael G also has parked his car. So we are down to 11 cars running. But Roman Decanta is not really letting loose of Chesco Munuera.
No, he's not letting him get away that easily, is he?
And here comes the slipstream again. And we also see Ronin Hood chatting in Twitch. I know that is possible. I may have done that in the past as well, but maybe you shouldn't when leading a race. That's just some advice from me.
What he probably should do is turn his headlights on.
If he can. Because it doesn't seem like he can after those incidents. But it seems like, even with the damaged chest grass to the front of his car, although in all fairness, so does Romain, he has the speed to keep Decanta at bay at the end of the straights. Oh, hard braking zone into turn 1. Oh, and I think that was a bit too aggressive from Decanta. And I think that is Dennis Kurzer up into 5th, picking up the pieces. And with that, the Katowice Audi made his way from P15 to P5. But yeah, it was a very... maybe not on purpose, but let's say a very brave dive from Romain Decanta there.
It was optimistic, that's for sure.
What's also optimistic is Ronin Hood coming into the pits. Is he repairing damage?
He's refueling, apparently. But not repairing his headlights.
Oh, Dominic Ladler against Tony Thomas 4P2. They go side by side. But I think the Audi will be able to stay ahead going into turn 1. And he does, but Ronin Hood only 3 seconds up the road from the chasing pack now. But less than 4/10 also separating the duo 4P2. Dominic Ladler always very aggressive going into turn 13. But this loses him a lot of valuable time. And Tony Thomas always getting a bit loose, especially over the curbs. They are not high in Jeddah, but still they can mess you up, and we've seen it from around. And he's actually giving up the position. He knows that it's not worth spending his time and maybe even backing up to Piotr Zdajewy, who is about 10 seconds down the road. He wants to have that time to spare for the next 10 minutes. It will be interesting what lap time one can do on this lap with a fully repaired car. Sandra Bullock, meanwhile, she has improved her lap time. She's picked up damage again, but she's down to 3.2.
Yeah, Rowan's got a fair amount of, well, he's got a lot of clean air ahead of him, so he's definitely got a good chance of putting a quick lap in.
Well, he doesn't have much longer to go on this lap to show us.
He's got Michael G ahead of him. It's 8 seconds gap right now, so he can maybe get another quick lap in.
Well,
Dominic Ladler is
202.8 is
sorry,
not
carry
far
on.
off. 202.8 is not too far off. But Dominic Ladler 204.5, so he's definitely quicker than the BMW. But Dominic Ladler is also, of course, carrying some damage from previous incidents.
Ladler's doing a good job of gapping Tony Thomas right now, though. He's making sure he doesn't have to worry for the next 5 minutes or so. Just got to keep it nicely on the tarmac.
Have about 6 minutes left to go. So either 3 more laps. Timothy Fridge also moved up back into 11th. And Michael G is also still on the track, so that was a mistake on my part. He may have been in the pits during that time. Tony Thomas still with the 12 seconds cushion to Piotr Zadal before the final podium place. I mean, for him, this will definitely be a successful race. We know that he struggled times and times again, and we know that he's a good driver. And today he's able to just show that driving smart can lead you quite a lot further than just being fast. And Ronan Hood giving us the Tim Schroeder flash. That is Michael G, I think, in the Audi. Yes, it is.
It was, yeah.
Slight wall tap there, but kept it in shape somehow. Meanwhile, Sandra Bullock is in 9th, and behind them, Radoslav Pironkiewicz defending from Timothy Fridge for P10. But I think with the damage Radoslav has here, that will be quite an easy take for Timothy Fridge. And indeed it is. So maybe we'll see a bit of fighting between P9 and P10 for the last lap, because Timothy Fridge is a bit quicker here. Further up the road we have David Baker, who I think also had a pretty eventful race.
Yeah, he's just set his fastest lap of the race, though, so he seems to be doing fairly well.
Which was also 800th faster than Sandra Bullock, so every lap he can do it like that will help him secure that 8th place. Gap between Decanter and Monroe has grown to 4 seconds, so these two are a bit further apart. And Dennis Kurzer, I mean, it's kind of ironic that the Katowice livery is both one of the luckiest and the, well, unluckiest liveries in this race. One driver incorporating both in the form of Dominik Ladler, being unlucky at the start and then luckier later on. But Dennis Kurzer, he went from P15 to now P5 and doesn't seem to drop back anytime soon.
No, he's got he's going a little bit slower than Romain Decanter, but he's got a good gap on him, so he doesn't have to worry about it too much. Only a lap or two to go.
Of course, on top of the points you get for your finishing position, you also get a point for finishing in a position. So that would mean that if you made it throughout the race, you get a good decent points tally. But I think Ronan Hood is about to start his final lap of the race. It's 1.6 seconds now between Timothy Fridge and Samuel Bell, and those two will have to run one more lap. They are in front of Ronan Hood on the track, only with the 11 of Radoslav Pironkiewicz behind them. So they will have plenty of time to swap positions, if Timothy Fridge is able to do so.
Yeah, probably not the outcome that Sandra Bullock was looking for there. But Rowan just not able to get past them two and cut the race a lap shorter.
Yeah, I mean, they both got quite compromised by the incident between Ronan Hood and Sandra Bullock, because they two had contact, and Timothy Fridge at that time was in 4th on the track. He wouldn't be in that position if it wasn't for the contact afterwards with Sandra, which basically was a chain reaction after Ronan, then Hood, and Sandra came together. So he has one more lap, and he is in a good slipstream position. Ronan Hood out of turn 23. So through can't talk anymore. Through turn 27 we go, and Ronan Hood will win the opening race of Season 6. Maybe with a bit of controversy, maybe some stuff people want to talk about later on. But in the end, it's him on the first step of the podium, with a pit stop as well. And Dominik Ladler coming from, well, basically last to P2. I think that is a big story. This recovery drive. For the first time in the BMW, I think he can be happy with it. And Tony Thomas completing the podium with a solid performance, start to finish. Just drove it smart, kept it clean, and I think that was the main selling point for him. Piotr Zadai will come home in 4th, with Dennis Kurz also a great recovery drive to 5th. But this fight, I think, might go down to the line for P9. Timothy Fridge now with a very strong exit through the long S's. Turn 19, 20, and now 21, and then the, well, at this point, infamous 22. And will he try to make a move into turn 22? No, he does not. Think he will try it into the last turn. Keeps it close to the wall. And he's choosing the outside. Timothy Fritz is choosing the outside into the final turn. For the Porsche, this might actually work better with the exit traction. And it becomes a drag race to the line. We can see the delta shrinking. Finish line being quite early around here. And Sandra Bullock has it by 35 thousandths of a second. What a way to finish this race.
That was a very close finish. It's always good to see.
I don't think it was closer than, I think it was Enrico Bruiniger against Adrian Lunio in the Pragas. But it was a very close finish.
No, it wasn't quite that close.
But still, I think today was it was a very interesting race. I think that you can safely say.
It was eventful.
That's also a way to say it. Meanwhile, I will prepare a little something so we can see how the points table looks after the very first race. No big surprises, of course, after the first race. But yeah, there we go. We see Rohan den Hut leading the standings on 28 points, followed by Dominik Lala on 23 and Tony Thomas on 19. Kimi Hapler still grabbing some points from qualifying. So yeah, that is how we end race 1 in season 6. What do you think? How would you put this race into words if you had to?
It was, well, I do kind of have to. That's why I'm here. It was a crazy race with a lot of crazy things happening. I think you've said most of it. Amazing comeback drive by Dominic Ladler. Some questionable things going on various points of the field. But yeah, an eventful start to season 6. Hopefully it'll chill out a little bit from here, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I said it during the race. It reminded me a lot of a Road Atlanta race instead of a Jeddah race. The last time we drove Jeddah was a pretty good race, I remember.
Yeah.
With lots of on-track action. Today we had lots of on-track action, but in a different kind of compartment. Still, I'm looking forward to what comes next, because next time we will go, if I can click the right things, to Monza. Now, after this race, you might think, Monza? You sure? But yeah, the Monza usually has been actually quite clean for some reason. I mean, everybody knows the typical Monza race, but as we established today, it doesn't really have to be track specific to be chaotic. And the last Monza races we had,
that's very true.
if you think back to the fights between Schroeder and Rohan den Hut, which was pretty intense, and we had 4-way fights between the likes of Baker and Zadaibel in the mix. I think Fritsch was also in there. So very different kind of racing to what we've seen on other platforms on Monza. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, that will be in 2 weeks. Of course, in the meantime, we will have more racing because tomorrow will be the inaugural Creator Cup. Now, if you haven't seen it on our socials, the Creator Cup is 3 races with your favorite content creators, streamers, YouTubers, you name it. At least we hope they are your favorites because we really like them. And it will definitely be very interesting. You always know it's fun when you have those people around. You have the likes of Gamer Muscle, Ray, Dave Gaming, those you know from the content creator series we have running, which at the moment is done by Xander Racing and seems to be very popular as well. So we have those, Pixel Connect as well, him you know as well. Last week's University Sim Racing, they are also in there. So, and a couple of wildcards, I'd say.
Yeah, it should be some fun racing tomorrow. We've been doing the community vote for what is going to be the last race of the 3, so go and take part in that if you haven't already. I think it's still running.
It is. And I'd say, join us tomorrow. You can still vote for which track should host the finale. One of them being Jeddah, but also Hockenheim and Monza. In the Discord and on Twitter and Instagram. So, fairly of stuff to choose from where to vote. And until then, have a great time and goodbye.
Goodbye.